do here. Yes, sir.
I don't have a question per se. The other night during the debate, I want to tell you people, if y'all didn't see it, that lady right there is impressive. She can put them in their place, and she means what she says.
I've got a question. He's talking about, I heard you talk about the county governments and city governments growing. Of course, my wife happens to be in county government, and I hear her griping about states sending down unfunded mandates. Will you take a pledge as governor that you won't sign a bill that sends down unfunded mandates? If you're serious about no growth in local government, then give local government a chance not to grow.
I think that argument is another one where we haven't been given the full story. The state has some responsibility. The people of the state are sovereign. That's what our Constitution says. Those powers not delegated to the federal government, Article 1, Section 8, are reserved to the people in the state. People in the state decide that the counties are responsible for certain things. The counties have got to be responsible for those things. And for me to tax you in Austin to send the money back to you to make you do that, I think is maybe misusing those funds. What I will say is I think the state is guilty of the very thing that it rails against Washington for. Texas says Washington sends us unfunded mandates, and then we send unfunded mandates right on to the county. It would be my supposition to you that we ought to take some more advice from the founders and recognize that people vote with their feet. The state of Texas ought to look very carefully at the laws that it passes and realize that local government, that which governs least, governs best, and that it ought to be local. Maybe this county could look a little different from the next county, and people would begin to vote with their feet and move to those counties where they like the policies that are enacted there. Move to those cities, move to those school districts. We have tried to mandate one size fits all. I'm going to resist that, but I don't want to make a commitment to you that I can't keep. And I think that there are probably some statewide initiatives that we as a state believe, we as a people of the state believe need to be adhered to. And that in and of itself is going to require those local people to step up and do that. Otherwise, you got a huge state government, and that's not what any of us are interested in. Yes, ma'am.
You were talking about the 60 mandates.
Health insurance.
How long would that take to reverse?
That's a legislative process to introduce legislation that would repeal those particular bills, and it would take one session if we could get it done.
Is that something you would
Absolutely promote. The state of Alabama, Texas Public Policy Foundation, again, has a study on that, and they compare us to the state of Alabama that has 19 mandates, and they look at health insurance for a 25-year-old male in Alabama as compared to a 25-year-old male in Texas, and the health insurance here is 3 times more expensive than what it is in a state that has just 19 mandates. So we absolutely have the opportunity to repeal that. Don't confuse health insurance with health care. Health insurance is an insurance policy. It doesn't improve health care at all, but I know that insurance costs, the rising cost of insurance, is something that's crippled many employers. They want to provide health insurance benefits. I think Whole Foods has done some pretty innovative things with their employers. John Mackey is the CEO of that company, and he's done some innovative things because of the rising cost of insurance to force competition in, force his employees or allow his employees to look closely at where they're getting their service, and they're shopping around and finding the better prices. And so there's some innovative things that we can do. It's about getting government out and letting the market, the competitive forces of a free market, drive quality up and cost down. Yes, sir.
I know you talked to the South Texas Board of Sheriffs. You reached briefly the subject of let's talk about the drugs and how to fight this. Did you find a willingness in those law enforcement officers to have this discussion? Because you took a position that's tough, the standard political position, tough on crime, lock-up. But we're filling our prisons with drug addicts, and they come out drug addicts, and we haven't solved anything. except the cost of housing people.
I think from the study that we're doing of the problems with the penetrable border that we have with the civ at our southern border, the biggest concern, I think, of law enforcement is not the individual drug user, but the major trafficker, the large volume of narcotics and illicit substances that are coming across our border. And when we get serious about making sure that all traffic goes through the legal ports of entry, we'll make a huge dent. We'll put a huge dent in that trafficking. The governor talks a lot about Operation Border Star and how effective it's been in reducing drug traffic, but there's some other reports out there that would say it's been very effective in reducing drug traffic in the rural areas of the state. You know, we've seen reductions there, but the major drug traffic comes through Laredo and El Paso and McAllen, the major cities. We haven't hardly touched those areas. So the actual reductions in the volume of drugs has not been very effective. We've got to get serious about securing that border and making sure that all traffic comes through the legal ports. As to how much people want to talk to me, I think that's been a great challenge in every area, not just in border policy, but until a week ago, you know, the rank and file individual had to say she's not going to go anywhere, and it's really been a labor of love to sit down and have an in-depth policy discussion. I've got to commend Arvin West, who's the chairman of the Texas Border Sheriff's Coalition, for spending several hours with me and one of my campaign staff, and he brought in, we probably had 10 or 12 deputies and law enforcement guys there having that discussion. He brought in Donnie Ray, who is the executive director of the Texas Border Sheriff's Coalition. I've had some extensive conversations, extended conversations with a couple of other, telephone conversations with a couple of other border sheriffs, and then I've had a couple who won't talk to me. They won't set up a meeting. They won't let me meet with anybody in their department. I said, I just want to visit with somebody in your department, anybody, to talk to you about what's going on in your county. Sorry, nobody's available. Sorry, nobody's available. So I think as the campaign gains momentum and people realize that I am going to have an impact on these issues in Texas, they'll be more willing to step up and have that conversation. I absolutely believe that we will find the wisest solutions, not because Debra Medina is the Messiah, but because she understands that the best solutions come from the minds of men. Come together in an assembly of people who are concerned about an issue. Work together and we'll find the best solutions. We've had people in office who think they've got the answers. And no one of us does. You know, our founders put freedom of assembly in the Bill of Rights because they understood it's that assembly, that deliberation, that gets us to the best answers. So you're not going to find me sitting in Austin saying, this is what we need to do. I'll tell you another anecdotal story about the governor. I think it speaks volumes. My last name's Medina. Have you noticed I don't look too Hispanic? German, Czech background. But my husband is as Tex-Mex Mexican as you can get. He was born and raised in Texas. He was quarterback on the football team in high school. We met. We grew up in the same small town. I've got a Hispanic family. They basically don't pay attention to politics. We would all know that the Latin community in Texas votes almost straight ticket Democrat. If we are effective politically in public policy discussions, if we're effective in our businesses, our customer base ought to reflect the community from which we draw our clients. Our staff ought to reflect the community from which our church ought to look like the community in which we serve. When we go to political events and everybody looks like me, we're not reaching Texas. And I have struggled with that as a Republican county chairman for years. Hispanics are pro-life, they're pro-family. I bet the percentage of entrepreneurs within the Hispanic community is absolutely competitive with the number of entrepreneurs in the Anglo community, in the Caucasian community. Why aren't we getting our message out, and why aren't they working and voting with conservatives?